Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan, and I'm glad to have all of you with me today. I do have a very special guest today. He is the host of the Absolutely Cosmic podcast. Please welcome Joshua Salgado. Hey, Joshua.
How are you? Thank you for having me on, Dan. It's an honor.
I'm honored to have you on. Thank you for coming on. Um,
Thank you.
so, Joshua, as I mentioned, you have your own podcast, but before we dive into that, would you like to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So, um, so I guess where do I start? I'm a C-130 loadmaster in the Air National Guard, but I didn't always end up in this sweet gig. It took me about 3 or 4 years to be able to join. I was actually denied from the United States Marine Corps for having bilateral club feet, two BUMED medical waivers, and then a congressional inquiry, and it wasn't able to be overturned or any other options. So I looked into other branches, and I was kind of blessed into where I fell into, being able to join the Air National Guard and then become a loadmaster. I then went to training about a year and a half later, deployed pretty much after I finished my training. And I've been in the aviation career field for a little over 3 years now, military aviation career field. And I believe I've visited about 16 countries in approximately like 10 different states. And in the next coming weeks, that might keep going up. Um, so I'm constantly traveling. This summer, I pretty much was living a transient lifestyle, living out of a luggage bag, because I went from an exercise in Sacramento, California, and then came home for 2 days, uh, loaded up a plane, and then we ended up going to the Arctic Circle in Greenland, to airdrop some supplies for the National Science Foundation out there. So I'm always traveling, getting really blessed to be able to live that military lifestyle. And then ultimately, when I came back from my first deployment, I actually struggled with mental health a little bit. So I kind of took a very dark turn, and struggled quite a bit. I ended up getting help. But part of me finding my purpose outside in the civilian world was me actually starting my own creative venture and business. And it since then has given me like a pride and joy. It's really passion to be able to do that on the outside. So I have the Absolutely Cosmic podcast where we talk about anything self improvement from the nerdy perspective. I've published 38 episodes, and we're working on 2025's calendar list for our guests to come on. Dan, hopefully you'd be interested in coming on, and we could talk, and have a good conversation. But
Absolutely.
from the Yeah, that'd be awesome. And as well, I actually recently released a trading card line, that goes with my gym wear line. Excuse me. So we do gym wear for the gym nerd. I noticed with the military, I got into fitness even more so. Um, as the requirements for being on the airplane, you have to be kind of physically durable, I guess. Um, and I noticed as a nerd myself, I love Dragon Ball, Star Wars, Marvel. Um, Actually, while I was away in California, I read The Inkle, which is written by, I believe, Jodorowsky, illustrated by Mobius is the first one, I believe. Phenomenal. Um, but yeah, I've always been interested in the nerdy sphere. Noticed that there was no gym wear, no like apparel, no activewear for nerds, no sci-fi themed activewear. So I made that my mission to start that, and then decided to be the first gym wear brand with a trading card line, and then we're the first trading card line to integrate fitness into the core mechanics. So we have over 101 different cards, five different factions, five different rarities, and it follows the plot line of the graphic novel that we're actually working on. I wrote the script, and we're actually looking for an illustrator and to get it published eventually in the next year or two, hopefully.
Okay, awesome. Well, Joshua, it sounds like you've had a pretty busy life, got a lot of stuff going on there.
Oh yeah.
And I'm curious. So you said that you've been to about 16 different countries. In your travels, do you find that other countries also have a lot of nerds in them?
Yeah. So I would say so. So when I was over in Djibouti in 2022, so that's the Horn of Africa. It's a few hours away from like Somalia, Kenya. The locals would work on base, and I noticed something. And I had a crew, on our crew. We had a lot of guys who've deployed before, have a lot of time on the airplane, so they kind of mentioned it a few times. Um, but Sorry about that. The puppy's barking. Um, but I noticed that they actually watch wrestling a lot, and every now and then they'd put on like maybe like a Star Wars or a science fiction like type movie. But I noticed out there in Djibouti, the Kenyans and the Somalians and all the locals out there, they really had a liking. Like on their break, we'd watch them, and they'd be like, as soon as like someone like The Rock would come out, literally they'd be like, "Oh!" You see them all excited and stuff. So it was really cool to see that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, are you yourself a wrestling fan?
I used to be. I haven't followed in recent years, but I used to watch it back in the Batista versus John Cena era. That was kind of my era. I grew up, and I was always a Batista fan. You know, he's a beast, and that is the Undertaker still around? Is he still wrestling, or is he retired?
He retired, but he does make
Okay,
like an occasional appearance still.
okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. I was always a big Undertaker fan as well. I loved when he would come out, and he always has the cool entrances and like little storylines and whatnot. And I was like, this guy's pretty rad.
Now, you mentioned Batista. How do you feel about his movies?
I think he's a phenomenal actor. I think especially he plays Drax, and I think he's perfect for that role. I love that he's done action. I think in recent years he's kind of experimenting with different kinds of roles and stuff. And I've seen he's been on his own fitness journey because he. I read an article that he's always been like 200 plus pounds, like obviously very muscular, but he's trying to lose weight for health reasons as he gets older. And I thought it's really interesting. And I wonder like what roles in the future or how that's going to play for like Drax, and Guardians of the Galaxy and whatnot in the future. But yeah, I love his acting. I love his acting. I love Drax is probably his most well known that I enjoy from Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers and everything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. He is a very good fit for that role.
Yeah, for
Joshua,
sure.
um, and also during your time traveling, um, how would you say that's impacted your life? Like, have you learned a lot by traveling to these different countries?
Oh, 100%. Um, it actually brought a big awareness. So my deployment in 2022, I feel like was kind of the catalyst for a lot of like the introspection that I did that kind of eventually led to me starting the business and being on this journey that I am now. But I realized that the world is so much more vast than you can ever imagine, and that no matter where you go, people are still people. And despite the difference in culture, despite everything, you could, again, like over in Djibouti, the culture is so much different. For us, let's say I'm from New England, so we have that traditional, Revolutionary War, 1776. That's how our country was founded. Um, we have a very typical, even the architecture, how we run our business over there. Predominantly Muslim faith. The architecture is structured based on that as well. The landscapes, the agriculture. Like one thing that I learned over there is that camels are actually a sign of currency of high wealth. So if someone has a large herd of camels, they're actually much more wealthy, and it's kind of a sign of wealth or nobility. And there was actually a few herders that would every morning come by at a certain time with had to be like 60, maybe 70 camels, and by sundown, walk away. And our base was kind of like on the water a little bit, so there was a little bit of a delta, and it was beautiful. It was cool. But yeah, the despite differences in culture, despite differences in wherever you go, right? Humanity is still humanity. And at the same time, we also, are given so much opportunity here. But I think understanding that the world is so vast, it's kind of like a superpower because you're like, well, then I can do anything. And if I fail at it, that's okay because like the world feels like it's infinite. You know what I mean? There's so many more people than you could ever imagine, so much more land, so much more culture. I could fail my next 10 years and be okay. And most of the time you won't, because if you start the journey, that's the biggest step, and it's just keep going, and eventually you'll be successful.
Yeah, a lot of times that can be the the most difficult part, can it?
Yeah,
Just getting started.
like jumping into a pool, or off a diving board. You know, you look down and it looks scary, but as soon as you jump in, it's while you're falling into the water, while you're swimming, it's fine and it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. And if you choose not to, then you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering, "Oh, gee, maybe I should have done that. That probably would have been a lot of
Yeah,
fun."
yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Uh, Now let's talk a little bit about your more about your podcast. Um, you've been going at this for a while, and you said you got 38 episodes.
Yes, sir, indeed.
Okay. Okay. Now, um, what's been your biggest takeaway from doing that so far?
I think I think it's sharpened my communication skills quite a bit. Um, I think it's really, to me, the passion and the fun comes into two people, the audience and the guest. So when you have the guest on and you ask them these interesting questions about, what they've accomplished or what their goals are or their beliefs on something, and you see their eyes light up and you see them get really interested in something and they start going off on that tangent or telling that story. And it's like, that's just exciting to be able to hear their perspective. And much like a lot of people, well, not really criticize, but talk about Joe Rogan, how he's probably much more intelligent than an average person, yet not doing much formal education because of his podcast, because he's just talked to so many people. You conversate and you can be able to say, wow, that person's philosophy is excellent. And then the audience, like our podcast, Absolutely Cosmic Podcast, is self-improvement from the nerdy perspective. So we really try to bring on people of different career fields or backgrounds and talk about topics like fitness. And we're slowly going to be working into like finance and other different realms, maybe talking about the entrepreneurial or creative journey as we progress, and kind of just give people an opportunity from our perspective, maybe some nuggets of information or motivation, maybe even.
Is there a story behind the name of the podcast, Absolutely Cosmic?
So that actually is tied to, so our brand is called Cosmic Absolute. So when I started it, so I'm a big Star Wars fan. So Cosmic, I wanted something space related, and then Absolute, because I always thought it was funny how Palpatine was like, Sith don't deal in absolutes, or Sith only deal in absolutes, excuse me. Um, and so I was like, I got to make a play on it because I love Star Wars. So I did that, and then I was like, okay, we're gonna start a podcast. We got to make it a play on the brand now. So I was like, absolutely cosmic podcast. So a lot of the stuff has always been just a play around the main gymwear brand. But yeah,
Okay, that's cool. And speaking of your gymwear brand, people can see what that's all about if they go to cosmicabsolute.com and see some of the items that you have available there. What
yes,
made you
sir.
decide to start creating your own gymwear?
So um, ideally the goal was, so when I came back from my deployment, again, when I was struggling with mental health, the gym has always been kind of a place where I stress relieve. It's kind of a place where I, in a weird term, kind of meditate. As you're working out, you're kind of focused on working out and you get away from the world. So I made an observation. I was like, I noticed that everybody, there's the Gymshark, you have Nike, Adidas, all your typical gym wear, athletic wear brands, but I never really saw anybody wearing anything super nerdy. And if they did, it was just a regular t-shirt. It wasn't really anything tailored towards, working out or any fitness type stuff. So I was like, well, maybe I can give a shot at it. And I've always been kind of crafty with Photoshop and video editing. And we utilized a little bit of AI as well. So that was something on deployment. It was emerging. And I was like, I want to mess with it. And then kind of ties to the graphic novel. So I'd always wanted to, write my own story, have some sort of intellectual property or world that I could build and a story that I can tell. So I was like, well, why don't I make some T-shirts? And as I'm making them and come up with ideas, I come up with a little backstory, and it became almost like this methodic creative process. I would sit in front of a computer for hours on end. I'd be like frustrated when I'm trying to get something to work perfectly, that artist view, and a lot of the designs don't even make it to the website half the time. Um, and so I ended up, you know, posting some of these. starting the website, posting them on the website, and I was like, why not give it a shot? Just because I haven't seen it done in the way we're doing it before, and like I said before, if I don't jump in the pool, then I'm gonna regret not ever jumping in and having the fun and getting that journey.
Awesome. Now, do you do all of the work on the graphic novel yourself, or do you have like a team that like writes it, helps you write it?
So I've written, I believe, our the script that we're working on, or that I'm working on, is about 50 to 60 pages as of right now. I wrote it. I'm looking for an illustrator currently to help actually make that come into fruition. And then we're actually exploring different options with awards and stuff like that for the script, as well as once the graphic novel is produced. So yeah, but in short, I write it, and I'm going to be looking for an illustrator, so it'll be a kind of a collaboration project eventually.
That's awesome.
Thank
And
you.
I, it's also pretty unique too. I would think you start your own gymwear brand, and then off of that you make your own graphic novel. That's pretty awesome. I never heard of anyone doing
Thank you.
that before. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not all though.
I have been on the side when I'm not super busy. I had recently, I was an extra in a very independent web series, and I'm looking to some more independent acting opportunities out here in New England. So that's kind of a side hustle, as well as that side hustle, artistic, creative opportunity to develop the creative and communication skills.
Okay,
So
yeah,
and
good practice.
yeah, yeah. But that's something that's kind of, as they say, feast or famine. It's kind of, I'm not really putting my heart and soul into that too much right now. It's just kind of, I guess, for fun, for hobby. If a project comes up that I can, you know, be a part of, I'll definitely take that up.
Now, have you always been interested in like the nerdy things, or did that come later in life?
So I've always been what you don't see right now is, like, behind the camera, I have a bunch of collectibles. I have a bunch of, so I was given like Steve Ditko recopies of the Spider-Man comics. I think that's where it kind of started, with Spider-Man and Daredevil. I had a few of those as a kid, Daredevil comics. And eventually, as I got older, I got into collectibles, action figures or pops for a little bit, and anything like that. And video games was a big thing too. Um, so I've always kind of dabbled, been interested. I could, when I'm like editing videos or even designing a T-shirt, sometimes I'll look up like the 2 or 3 hour Star Wars or Marvel lore videos that people make, and I'll just play it in the background and just listen to, like, oh wow, that's, I did never realize it was that deep, or that was, the armor piece of a clone trooper came from this or that kind of thing. Um, so I'm that's definitely super into anything sci-fi.
Okay. Do you have any favorite movies? You mentioned Star Wars. Other than the Star Wars?
Yeah. So I'm a big Terminator fan. Terminator 1 through 3, I think, are probably phenomenal. Terminator 2, I will argue, is the best film ever to be produced by James Cameron, and probably ever to be produced in general. But
Yeah, I mean that's pretty good. I mean, I can't argue that. That's that's Arnold at his best too.
yeah,
Terminator 2.
yeah,
Um, yeah. I'm I'm trying to remember. I think there was a Super Nintendo video game. It was like Terminator versus RoboCop. I'm sad we never got that movie.
yeah. That'd be pretty sweet, because we got Alien vs Predator, Terminator vs RoboCop, and I think there was a comic book line, if I'm not mistaken, that was like a
Oh,
Terminator
okay.
versus RoboCop, and it was like, I've never read it, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, like RoboCop goes to the future, and it's pretty wild. But that'd be a pretty awesome movie to see. Get Arnold
Yeah.
get back in front of the camera.
What did you think of the Alien versus Predator movies?
I love them. I love them. Was it Ridley Scott is phenomenal. Um, I think I love the action. I love the creepy crawly type body horror movies. I'm kind of a big horror fan as well. Um, but I'm more on Team Xenomorph, Team Alien. I think they got it. They're pretty wild. Their whole life cycle and just creepy, slimy monsters, versus the predators.
Now, trying to remember, Aliens 2, was that James Cameron also?
It might have been. I'm not too sure. I want to say
Okay,
that.
I think so. Because the first one was Ridley Scott, and
Yep.
I think the second one was James Cameron.
Yes.
And that,
Yes.
if that's the case, then I would have to say that's the best James Cameron movie over Terminator
Yeah.
2. That's just my opinion.
All right. All right. I mean, that one's pretty good too. I think I've probably rewatched that times more times than it's healthy to say. But so my question for you is: have you seen Alien Romulus?
Not yet.
Not yet. Same as well. I haven't either. So I heard it was excellent, and I've seen a lot of like the images and clips and stuff, and so I got to definitely check it out. But with movies, there's always that initial hype, so give it that critical view.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I haven't seen any of the Alien movies past three.
Okay.
Um, well, not counting Alien versus Predator, I saw those, but like I didn't see Alien 4, or I didn't watch the. I think there was one they made after that too. I haven't seen that one,
Yeah. I know
but
they made the prequel, was it Prometheus? I think is a prequel to the Alien movies.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I heard it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little funky. It's kind of like, where's the alien? But
But it just three kind of took the wind out of my sails a little bit. Just the way they just kind of wiped out everyone that survived number two. You know,
Mhm. Yeah,
that was. Eh.
yeah.
I
And
know
no,
the director wanted to go a new direction, but still, eh.
yeah. And remind me if I'm wrong, but number three is with like the cloned. I think they call it like the newborn. It's like the mix between Sigourney Weaver and like the xenomorph, correct? And it's in the like the industrial spaceship with all the prisoners, I think, or all the miners. Miners, or is that number two? It's been a minute since I've watched.
uh, well, number three is where they're on the prison planet, or I don't know if it's a planet or a spaceship, but the
Mhm.
prison. That's the prison movie. Um, I thought four was the one with where she was cloned.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, they're definitely due for a rewatch.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. um, any favorite horror movies since you mentioned that?
Ooh. So for like sheer horror and like paranormally horror, I would say I think it's called The Autopsy of Jane Doe on Netflix. That one's pretty freaky. Um, and then I guess if you count it horror, it's kind of like a docu series. But the Jeffrey Dahmer series really was kind of freaky because it was just it happened and it was uh, a human. It wasn't paranormal or any monster or anything in the fantasy kind of realm. It was something that happened. So that that would be, I guess, for a series wise. But yeah, Autopsy of Jane Doe. I'm a big fan of Jason Voorhees, so I've watched most of them. Most of them. Jason versus Freddy. I'll watch any day. It's definitely a good Friday night watch.
Yep, yep, definitely. Joshua, um, so when we started talking, you mentioned that you were born with the club feet.
Yes.
Um, now, how has that affected your life? Because I'm sure it's made things more of a challenge for you. How have you dealt with that adversity?
So I think the biggest thing, I came up. I think the biggest thing was I want to say maybe around 11 or 12 years old. I kind of realized that if I keep a limited mindset, then I'll never be able to see how far I can go with this condition physically. Um, as a kid, most of my physicians, like the pediatricians and stuff that kind of saw me, they always said how I'd be relatively limited in my ability to be athletic, and that always kind of affected me. So when I got to that, preteen, 11, 12 years old, I kind of mentally made a decision. I was like, either I sit here and just, you know, let it be the reason why I never try to be, in shape or run or anything like that, or I just give it a shot. And if I suck at running, I suck at running. And unbeknownst to me, um, athletically and physically hasn't affected me at all. I mean, I completed in 2023. I completed the Marine Corps marathon. I did not train properly for it. I was at the peak bulk, so I'm about 5'8". I was 196 pounds. you know, I hadn't been running not nearly enough to do 26.2 miles. Um, and that was definitely a big challenge. But other than that, I've been able to lead a regular life. I lift, 4 to 6 times a week. I'm on my feet. My job is pretty strenuous on the airplane. I'm always walking the dog, going to run with the dog. I did last summer. I did tree work, so we're lugging big 80 to 100 pound logs, throwing them in a wood chipper. I never really had a problem. Um, and if I do, I just figure out a way around it. And um, I mean, as a kid, I did get picked on a little bit. Nothing super crazy of what you would think, but there's always kind of some jerks that are got something to say about certain things. So you know, I kind of realized, again at that 11 or 12 year old mark, like I just gotta, it's the cards I'm dealt, and either I use them to the best of my ability, or I can't complain about it. So I made that decision to just challenge it and see. Let's see what we can do with this, as I call them, the duck feet.
Now, is that so? I guess when you're born with that condition, is there anything um, like that doctors can do to help improve it at all, or is it just kind of it is what it is?
So there is treatment, and in recent years there has been a lot more less invasive treatments. When I was born, I had tendinal releases. I was about 6 months old. I don't really remember it, and I had pins in my feet, from between like my big toe all the way to the back of my heel. Um, and essentially, what it did is, because my feet were turned inward and up, if I can kind of illustrate it. They were turned inward and up towards my calf. So what they did was, my Achilles tendon was extremely tight. They released that, as well as some other tendons and muscles that were extremely tight due to that Achilles tendon. And as far as I remember, and as far as I've ever been told, I walked at a relatively normal, recovered healthily, walked relatively normally. I know typically they try to do like cast, or like splints that will hold the foot in a certain, in that regular position, as a non-invasive treatment. And if it doesn't work, then they go to a more invasive treatment, such as what I got. Um, but again, especially in recent years, they've come up with some new, like, physical therapy, stretching, and those splints that are much more effective at negating the more invasive procedures.
Okay. Now you mentioned that the doctors kind of doubted that you'd be able to be successful at athletics. Was there anything else that you like, anyone you looked up to, or anyone that like served as like inspiration to kind of help push you forward?
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, my step uncle, he was actually in the army during the Iraq, and Afghanistan war. Did two tours, if I recall correctly. He has a crazy story. That was in the heat, '06 to '09, I believe, around that time. And I really looked up to him. I saw him. He was kind of like, almost like a big brother, uncle kind of role model. And, he would always send postcards when they'd go on, field exercises, carrying the packs and machine guns and stuff. So that was always kind of my, you know, the rough and tough lifestyle. But I was a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, big Muhammad Ali fan. That's actually kind of, I got into boxing and Taekwondo around 11 or 12. Again, that was kind of that pivotal, puberty era, if you will, that I got into my first kind of stages of fitness and exercise, um, as well as David Goggins. So before he became big, it was like 2015, 2016. Throughout the time that I was trying to join the service, and join the Marine Corps, and even get to boot camp, and those BUMED waivers were getting denied. The congressional inquiry, was denied. Throughout that time, David Goggins started public speaking a lot about his journey as a SEAL and his ultra marathons and stuff like that. So I kind of clung to that a little bit and found his words inspirational. And he's kind of hardcore. So I was like, I'm gonna, as he says, stay hard. I'm gonna go, try to be as beast and strong and push myself to get to my goals. So I would say those are the top three.
Okay. Now, did you say that that one marathon you did was 26 miles?
Yes, yes.
That's like you do that all at once, like no breaks in between, right?
Nope. So I got to mile 12. I ran through mile 12, good pace. I was like, I'm feeling great. And I just hit a wall. I literally was like, I like stopped for a second. I called the girlfriend. I was like, hey, I'm not even halfway yet, but I'm going to make it through. And I like hung up, put the music back in, jog walked most of the rest of it. And the last few miles, I kind of gimped my way through. And that was pretty brutal. If I ever do another marathon again, I'm definitely going to train properly because that was a challenge. But it's cool to do it down in DC. We had the Marine Corps Ospreys kind of did a low flyover as soon as we started, and they had stands and through the monuments. You kind of go by the White House and everything like that. So it was pretty cool to be able to run and do a marathon down in DC.
Yeah, that's very awesome. I've never ran 26 miles, but this summer I did run my very first 5K,
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
and about 12 steps into it, I was gassed.
I feel like the 5Ks are pretty challenging because if it's uh, is it 3.3 miles, right? About, I think, a little bit, give or take.
It's closer to 2.5, I believe.
Okay, okay, but I mean, I feel like the 5Ks are always a little more intense because you're like, it's only 2 miles. I'm gonna sprint, and then for me, I'm a half mile in, and I'm like, oh boy, this is where the pain starts.
Yeah. Well, since you're a Star Wars guy, I'll just real quick tell you the backstory behind that.
Yeah.
So I ran this with my wife. We didn't prepare for it. The only reason why we did it is because it was taking place on May 4th, and they were
Oh,
doing it was like a costume run.
oh,
So
that's cool.
like so I dressed up as Darth Maul and I ran the 5K as Darth Maul.
That's pretty cool. That had to get hot, dude. How did you like did you have a mask on, or did you like do the whole makeup and like get suction cup horns and whatnot, or
So yeah, I had the face paint, and then for like the horns, I had like a just like a swimmer's cap that I was
okay.
wearing, and I attached the horns to that. So yeah, it
Damn
was.
that. You
I'll
must
send
have
you a
been
picture
used.
later.
Yeah, hell yeah. You must have been sweating because he's got all the robes and they're all black too, and
Yep, I had
boots
the
and
black
everything.
robe, and
Oh God. That's
yeah,
awesome
so
though.
I may not have done very well in the 5K, but I did take home the award for having the best costume. So.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
And speaking of Star Wars, like just within the last week or so, I believe I heard they announced a new trilogy. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm very hopeful. Dan Filoni, um, you know, Kathleen Kennedy, if you're kind of the leader, the ringleader of Disney Star Wars, please don't go anywhere near it. No, I'm just kidding. Please do the fans justice. That's the biggest thing I think. I hope is a good story first and foremost before anything else. I think we should let the Skywalker family line go. They've run their ride. I want to see, maybe there's so much expanded universe out there, and now with Ray, we kind of explored a little bit of Palpatine, and Ray's father was kind of, you know, and so I want to see, different lines. Maybe Mace Windu is still around somehow, or his kid. Or I want to see. That's the goal is seeing a story outside of the Skywalker, story.
Man,
Yeah,
I have a hard time believing they're gonna let go of Skywalker. Just,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. I think
and
he's a staple. So
I actually haven't watched the last movie yet, so
Oh
um,
no.
no. I thought the first two were decent. I guess didn't make me excited enough to go rush out and see the third one,
Yeah.
even though it's been out for quite a while now. But still,
Yeah.
uh,
It's a good movie. I don't think it's necessarily the best Star Wars story. I think uh was it the Rogue One? I think Rogue One and like Solo. I think we need more stuff in that kind of vein. Kind of more down to earth. Like I love Jedi, I love Sith, but especially what they did with like the Mandalorian and Luke kind of being in that side story. I think we need something along those lines with the trilogy. Bring it back to something a little more grounded or a little more. I wouldn't say gritty, but a little less. Box officey.
yeah, I did watch Rogue One. That was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed that one
Yeah,
quite a bit.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was. I love, and spoiler, I love how the ending leads into episode 4. I think that
Yes.
that just was so cool how they matched it. And I think I want to say the Kenobi series. I think they did some scenes where it matched to the prequels, and I thought that was really interesting too. I haven't seen all of it, but I've seen a few clips and a few episodes. Again, because Disney Star Wars has kind of disappointed me a little bit, so I've kind of in the kind of same vein, I've kind of held back a little bit until maybe this new trilogy will change things and we'll get some, a badass story.
Yeah, well, I know the last trilogy was pretty divisive, so we'll see if
Yeah,
anyone's paying attention and they try and switch things up a little bit. But
yeah,
it'll be interesting to find out, though.
yeah, yeah.
now, now, are you a gamer at all?
I am. So I haven't gamed too hard recently in the past few years, but I play. I'm a big like Bethesda type guy. So back in my heyday, Elder Scrolls Skyrim, I'd play it. All the different races, all different. Just trying to find side stories and whatnot. And then I was a big Fallout guy. Fallout 4 was fun. Um, I was a big Halo guy. Big Halo 3 era. You got the Forge. You got Infected, I believe, and just it was just a good time back in the day. So haven't played too many games recently. Don't have too much of the time anymore. I'll hop on a good Fortnite game every now and then, but uh, definitely big Bethesda, big Skyrim type guy.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. I like those
Hell yeah.
open world games where they give you all
Hmm.
the freedom of choice, and I always make myself a villain, but it's just more fun that way.
Yeah. I'm always the guy to get distracted. I'll be on the main mission and then I'll see this little dungeon on the side, and you always walk in there, you fight the bandits or whatever, you save somebody, and it's like, oh, go grab this item from an ancient temple or whatever, or go do this random mission, and you travel across the map, and then I'm on another side quest, and then like 12 hours later I'm always like, wait, I'm only like in the third mission on the main storyline.
Yep, yep. Yeah, those are definitely fun.
Yeah.
Joshua, so before we wrap things up here, would you like to give us a little bit of a preview as the next podcast episode they have coming up?
Yeah, definitely. So uh I recently brought on the girlfriend for as a co-host, so we're probably going to be talking about a little bit of anthropology as well as Sasquatch. We're going to get into a little bit of cryptid debate and kind of talk about that. Maybe Sasquatch is an alien, so something to that effect. We always spice it up with some self improvement and some crazy you know conspiracy theory cryptid talk. So that's what we're doing. Hopefully next episode.
Now, do you the for the self improvement part of your episodes, do you like tie that into the other part? Like, would you talk about like Sasquatch's fitness routine or?
Not yet, but that's definitely a good idea because he's got to be yoked to live in the woods and be like 8 feet tall, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Joshua, once again, the website is cosmicabsolute.com.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any social media handles you'd like to throw out there?
We do. So we have Instagram and TikTok are our main ones, and then we have YouTube as well. They're all cosmic underscore absolute. Um, and again, we typically post a podcast every 2 weeks as of right now, and then come 2025, hopefully we'll be back to that full once a week schedule. That's the goal.
Awesome, very cool. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for having me on, Dan. It was an honor.
All right. Once again, Joshua Salgado, everybody. Thank you for coming on, and thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. No longer Twitter, though. I think I'm going to stop posting on Twitter. I've had my fill of that place. I'm going to try out Blue Sky and see how that goes. uh, until next time, take care, everybody.